Tonight on Here and Now, a first for WestJet.
St. John's has a place in WestJet's future, and WestJet has a place in St. John's in the province's future.
The tourism and business communities have been asking for it, and now WestJet is delivering. Beginning this fall, a year-round service between St. John's and Calgary will be offered for the very first time. That story coming up.
The commerce that has been conducted here in the past few months has been incredible.
Burgie business. Twillingate has a banner year. We talk ice industry.
That's really what this job felt like. It felt like actually getting to step onto the enterprise.
Local director hits it out of this world. Jordan Canning lands Star Trek.
This is CBC Here and Now.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. More signs today that air travel has rebounded from the upheaval brought on by the global pandemic. WestJet has announced a new route between this province and Western Canada, but one key destination is still missing. Here and Now's Terry Roberts reports.
The lobby to improve air connectivity between this province and destinations in the rest of Canada received a boost today with these words from a WestJet executive.
This winter, we are delighted to introduce year-round service from St. John's to Calgary for the very first time.
The new winter service will operate twice a week, beginning November 2nd. That's in addition to the airline's summer service between St. John's and Alberta.
It is great for investment attraction, it's great for conventions, it's great for shoulder tourism season.
The airline is also bringing back its St. John's to Florida connections, with once-weekly flights to Orlando from October 16th to June 24th. And a once-weekly flight to Tampa Bay from March 26th to May 26th. It's only a fraction of what the airline was offering prior to the pandemic, but WestJet says it's here to stay.
So there is a transition in our business where we're changing the type of flights that we have here, but we're not changing our commitment to the region and to the province.
It's been a slow, painful crawl back for air travel following the pandemic, and all levels of government, business, and tourism leaders have been clamoring for new and enhanced routes, vying for investment from struggling airlines. But it's a highly competitive scene, made only more difficult by a shortage of air crews. So today's announcement was welcomed.
This is absolutely fantastic news for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, not just the St. John's, but the people of the entire province.
The airport authority is offering incentives to WestJet for the extra routes, a break on landing and terminal fees, for example.
We did have some minor adjustment to some fees, but nothing substantial.
This airline has had a presence in St. John's for more than 20 years, but WestJet is undergoing a reorganization. It's focusing on its base in the West. Gone are all the East Coast flights to Europe, for example. But provincial leaders are still making their pitches to the airline.
We don't want to be lost. Because we're not West. We don't want to be lost in the new vision of WestJet.
Air travel at St. John's has nearly rebounded to pre-pandemic levels. But one thing that wasn't announced today, a return of direct flights to Europe. The Premier says that remains a priority.
There remains much to do. And I have to tell you, stay tuned, because we are just getting started.
Terry Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
A near miss with a moose caused a chain reaction on the Trans-Canada in central Newfoundland on Sunday, and the results were deadly. The RCMP say a 54-year-old man died following a 3-vehicle collision on the TCH east of the town of Southbrook. Police say it appears 2 vehicles and a car and an SUV traveling in opposite directions collided head-on after swerving to avoid a moose. A truck then rear-ended one of the vehicles. The 54-year-old driver of the car died at the scene. Other occupants of the car and SUV received serious injuries. An investigation is ongoing. Well, nurses have approved a new collective agreement with the provincial government. Nurses will get a 2% raise in every year of the 4-year agreement. They'll get a $2,000 one-time bonus, and they'll also move up 2 steps on their wage scale. The deal contains improvements the government says will make it easier to recruit and retain nurses by offering incentives for people to work full-time hours. Anyone working more than 15 years will receive a premium based on the years of service. Government also says it has more flexibility on the start time and length of shifts, and the new agreement received overwhelming support from members.
Well, guess who is back? The heat warning. It is back for parts of central Newfoundland, for Gander, Grand Falls, Windsor, Exploits, and Bonavista North. And what it means is we're going to see a lot of hot and humid weather in this area. That's in red here on the map. Temperatures highs of 29 degrees with humidex as high as 35 degrees, and that's going to last until late this week sometime. So, you know, all of those heat-related things we had been talking about last week still stand. Don't leave people or pets in vehicles. You could suffer from any sort of heat-related illness when temperatures are this high. Now, taking a look at the weather systems that are affecting the province right now, you can see out here, this is what was Tropical Storm Dawn. It has been downgraded now. It's not affecting the province, but over the weekend it was the first hurricane in the Atlantic, so that is worthy to note. Talking about the weather that is on the way now. There we go. Let's talk about the weather that is on the way. Some thunder showers tonight, sun and cloud tomorrow, and a nice day on Wednesday as well. We'll talk about all that a little later in the show.
Thanks, Heather. Well, getting access to healthy protein can be a struggle for some families as the price of groceries keeps skyrocketing. The Single Parents Association has received a big help. It just received a load of codfish. It comes from Sharing the Harvest, a group that's provided moose and caribou, but this is the first time they've donated fish. Have a look.
Sharing Harvest is a program that I developed a number of years ago to provide country food, nutritious food, moose, caribou, etc., to the food bank recipients who normally wouldn't have the resources to possibly acquire them. Last year was our 3rd year in operation. We provided capelin, blueberries, partridge berries, rabbit, moose, caribou. To our big game donations alone, we provided approximately 5,000 meals to the food banks.
I mean, the need for our food bank is growing every single day. You know, there's constantly families coming to the door. Our food bank schedule is always full. So it truly is growing by the day, and the need for, you know, meats and things like that, as prices are going up, the need is higher.
Well, I'm very proud to announce that this is our Sharing the Harvest first time donation of codfish. I went out last weekend and caught some codfish, approximately 40 pounds. I filleted it, I skinned it, I boned it. It may contain some bones. Portioned it, packaged it, put a label on the bag, and froze it. And now what we have is, I can't remember how many bags, might be about 15 bags here of portions of codfish for the clientele.
Oh, it's huge. I mean, what Newfoundland family doesn't love a good feed of fresh fish? So, you know, this donation allows us to provide that to more families throughout the province, and we're so happy to be a part of it.
Well, first of all, it'll provide a healthy, balanced meal, and it also will take some of the folks who obtain this food, take them back to their childhood, because this is what they grew up on. Country food is so very, very important to the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, and having the means and necessary travel arrangements and everything else to get it, sometimes it's not possible. So that's why I decided this program would be the program to be able to help out, and here we are today.
Oh, they love it. You know, when they come to the door and Nick hands them, you know, some bags of fresh fish or some fresh moose meat or fresh berries that they know are picked locally or fished and harvested locally, oh, they absolutely love it. And the look on their faces of happiness and joy says it all. It's a lot about the experience. It's the experience of, you know, helping mom or dad bread the fish. It's the experience of the smell in the house. Like, I mean, as much as we hate it sometimes, what's Newfoundland without the smell of fish?
We're in an incorporated not-for-profit group, and we're volunteers, and what do I get out of it? I get the great feeling, the hairs on my arm standing up when I come down to places like this, single parents, to be able to make a donation of country food to them.
Well, Innu youth got a hands-on look at ocean research to understand how the sea is changing. Innu Nation hired a ship to help with scientific research, and students got to see it firsthand. Here Now's Heidi Adder has more.
24 young adults were able to go aboard the Polar Prince, rented by Innu Nation for a 3-week expedition. Leanne Rich says she was in awe watching the research.
I was really inspired by how they've been working about the ecosystems, or how the sea fish work.
Innu Nation held the expedition to continue their ocean research. They're doing ROV scans, water sampling, dives, and more. Innu Nation is studying historic Innu sites along the shorelines and historic islands. Researchers are looking at the waters and sea creatures to see how the ocean is now and be able to tell how climate change impacts important areas. But they've partnered with students on ice. They wanted to bring young adults like Leanne and community members aboard. They did 3 cohorts with 8 people each week for 3 weeks.
That's more valuable than any sample that we could take.
The young adults were able to see divers work. The Department of Fisheries and Oceans do testing. Hannaford do his ROV and drone work, and more. Hannaford says it's too early to know what this expedition's research will tell them, but he says there's a lot of opportunities for young Innu in science, and he hopes this experience may inspire them into the future.
I hope that that people can see maybe some pathways forwards that is related to being on a ship or on an expedition for themselves.
Hannaford says Innu Nations hopes to do more community expeditions like this in the future. For now, Innu Nation will be spending the next number of months going through the data. Heidi Adder, CBC News, Happy Valley, Goose Bay.
All these warm temperatures haven't just been hard on us, it's also been hard on salmon. The Nunatsiavut Community Council is calling on a full temporary closure of salmon rivers in southern Labrador. Salmon have been sweltering in the summer heat, and last week the Department of Fisheries and Oceans issued a modified closure of salmon rivers in the region. But now the Nunatsiavut Community Council is calling for further action from the DFO. The Indigenous government says it's measuring water temperatures in the low 20s when the maximum for salmon should be around 18 degrees. Well, this weekend was the launch of Come Home to Wabush 2023. The event was postponed last year due to concerns over COVID. They kicked off the weekend with an array of events from Indigenous drumming to Art Wander, the province's only outdoor art show showcasing local artwork along the walking trail near Jean Lake. The local Pride group had a read-along and coloring at the library this morning as well. Former students got to wander the halls of their old school and then take in some quilt work by the Catholic Women's League and also have a cup of tea. Well, hundreds of people marched in the Pride Parade in St. John's yesterday, capping off 2 weeks of festivities in the capital city. It's the largest Pride Parade in the province. While the weather was hot, it wasn't as hot as last year when the Pride Parade had to be postponed to September because of the hot temperatures.
The commerce that has been conducted here in the past few months has been incredible.
A big year for icebergs in Twillingate. Just how big? That's next.
And in the weather forecast, another beautiful warm summer day across much of the province with humidex values up into the 30s in some regions, and that's after a weekend of heavy rain for some parts. We'll take a look at that coming up.
Well, time for a look at the weather. And Heather, we know Nova Scotia was hit so hard on the weekend with rain. We'll be showing some viz of that a little later in the show. And this province did see some of that, but not nearly as much.
Not nearly as much. Those floods just catastrophic in some areas of Nova Scotia. We saw rain, especially on the south and west coast, but nothing like that. Let's take a look at some of the rain that we got here in St. Andrews. We got 107 millimeters of rain. Port aux Basques, 106. 94 in the Rec House, 85 in Codroy North. Bay d'Espoir saw just a millimeter less than that. And at the airport in Stephenville, 67. Gallant, 62. Burgeo, 58. St. Albans, 55. Lancelot, 44 millimeters. And Point May got 45 millimeters of rain. And some of these areas did see as much as 20 millimeters of rainfall per hour. So that's just quite a lot of rain. Taking a look now at today's highs, still quite warm on the northeast part of the island, 25 in St. John's, as much as 29 in Bonavista, and in through central where it hit 30 in Badger today, in the mid-20s along the west coast. And up into Labrador, we saw the 20s in Mary's Harbour and Cartwright, Happy Valley, Goose Bay, Churchill Falls, but much cooler in northern Labrador today. And when we put in those humidex factors on top of your temperature, as much as 38 degrees today in Gander Central under that heat warning that we talked about a little earlier in the show. Moving on now to our future tracker. What we should see tonight is a few showers over parts of central Newfoundland. We see them right now in central Labrador and Lab West. And what will happen in the overnight is that these will sort of clear out and we'll have some cloud pushing over much of the province with clear skies in through central tonight. However, we could see some thunder showers as well in some parts of the province. As we head into Wednesday, we'll see more showers along the coast. So this is our thunder shower outlook from Environment Canada. And what we will see is a risk of thunder showers or moderate risk here through central Newfoundland tonight and into tomorrow afternoon and through much of Labrador, through the central part of Labrador. And that comes to us from Environment Canada. Tonight, we're going to see much of our temperatures into the teens, more comfortable for sleeping than that really warm weather we saw last week. 18 in St. John's, cloudy skies, but we could see that risk of thunder showers in through central, and you can see we will get about 5 millimeters of showers possibly through central. Clear skies in Port aux Basques with some cloud there at 17. Marystown on the Burin Peninsula should see some showers or drizzle, 17 as well. But as we get into the Straits, cooling off a little bit, some cloud for you folks. Degrees. You will see in Mary's Harbour and Cartwright possibly a chance of thunder showers there as well tonight, and some showers possible in through Nain, and again thunder showers possible in Happy Valley, Goose Bay and in Labrador West tonight. Light winds from much of the province, winds from the south and the west on the island up to 20 kilometers per hour, and the north for coastal Labrador. As we go into tomorrow, we can see things clearing out, then some of those showers moving back in as we hit tomorrow afternoon, depending on where you are, and then things will cloud up a little bit and clear out a little again as we go into Wednesday night. Talking about tomorrow now, the red you see here, that's your humidex value. For St. John's, 26, mix of sun and cloud for us here on this end of the province tomorrow. A little bit more cloudy as we get to the southern Avalon and on the Burin Peninsula as well, a mix of sun and cloud, feeling like 35 with that humidex. Bonavista tomorrow. Could see some showers there, but 29 and 34 with your humidex. Into central Newfoundland where we could see that 35, and you see those thunder shower icons there. Could have a mix of sun and cloud, but we could see some of those thunder showers in the afternoon for you folks. Cooler along the coast down in Harbour Breton. As we head into the west coast, for the most part, everything up into the 20s, especially for the west coast, 28, 29 degrees. Could be as much as 35, 36 inland on the west coast with your humidex values. Moving on up to the northern peninsula, a little cooler there. Could pick up a few showers in St. Anthony, but sun and cloud for Port aux Choix and into the Strait in Lancelot. And Mary's Harbour, much cooler than you have been seeing in the last little while. As we get into central Labrador, we could see some thunder showers for Lab West and Churchill Falls in the mid-20s. Feeling like 29 tomorrow in Happy Valley, Goose Bay, but much cooler on the coast in Labrador. We'll have your long range coming up a little later in the show.
Well, it's been an incredible year for iceberg watching in this province, especially in Twillingate, a town that brands itself as a prime iceberg viewing destination. Captain Barry Rogers of Iceberg Quest Tours joins me now. So, Captain Rogers, you take tourists out to see the icebergs and the whales. Can you describe what this season has been like for you?
Carolyn, it has been fantastic. I mean, we've had an unbelievable iceberg viewing year here, the best I can remember in the past 30 years.
Wow, in the past 30 years.
Yes.
Tell us about some of the icebergs that you've been seeing. Have you been seeing big ones, and how frequently do you see them?
Well, I mean, we started off mid-May, and I mean, we had probably 25, 30 icebergs to go to on our regular 2-hour tour. I mean, we had 12 or 15 right kind of in the middle of the harbor there. But there was one spectacular one, and this one was about 1 kilometer long and about 1/2 kilometer wide. And that is the last piece that we done yesterday morning. I mean, eventually with time, it broke down, and that one drifted off yesterday morning.
Mm-hmm. So this has been the best season that you've had in 30 years, but can you give us a sense, like, how does this year compare to past years?
Well, the thing is, it's the volume of ice. I mean, we've had a great iceberg seasons, but this particular year has been the amount of the ice. So much to choose from, and so close to us as well. I mean, a lot of folks don't like onshore winds and northeast winds. I kind of like them because in the spring of the year, of course, they all bring the ice closer to shore, and we had a full month there in June month, and it kept them very close to shore, along with the pack ice, of course. So it was made up for a banner year for us.
Mm-hmm. And what's the situation in Twillingate now in terms of icebergs? Do you have any there now?
Well, as I mentioned, we have one there that we done our last tour to yesterday morning. We got another one about 10 miles to the northwest of Twillingate, and we're hoping to get this one in the next few days if we get the current and a bit of wind in our favor,
And, we are in the last week of July, and there's still some icebergs being spotted around the province. I heard reports of an iceberg in, like, St. Anthony, Conch, the Bayvert Peninsula, for example. Is it very late in the season to be seeing icebergs?
Well, the latest that Iceberg Quest has ever done a iceberg tour in a consistent way, that is, now it was August 11th. So I've seen it before, and then, of course, ice disappears, and then we may get a sporadic one that just drifts in, out of the blue in late August or September. We've done that before. But consistent viewing, I mean, this is, again, a banner year with such volume of ice leading up to this. I mean, we haven't stopped. I mean, we've been just, folks have been coming from all over the world, just loading and going, basically.
What do you think that this season, this banner year, what do you think it's meant for the economy in the area?
Well, I know what it's meant to us, Carolyn, and certainly on the northeast coast and central Newfoundland, and particularly Twillingate. I mean, the commerce that has been conducted here in the past few months has been incredible. I mean, all the shareholders, like the B&Bs and the hoteliers, restaurants been full up and happy enough about it. I mean, as you realize, I mean, there's 2 or 3 years there that was a bit stagnant. The past couple of years, and that was a big, well-earned turnaround for us,
Captain Rogers, I have another question for you. It's a bit off topic, but I was just thinking about it because you have so much experience on the water. You have been looking at these icebergs for most of your life, right?
Yes.
And we had an incident recently where 2 tourists came to Newfoundland and they pitched a tent on an iceberg and they stayed there overnight. I'm just wondering, did you see that story? And if you did, what did you think about it?
Well, I mean, it's foolhardy to start with. Very dangerous, in my opinion. I've been working around ice, as you mentioned, for a long time. I grew up in Iceberg Alley as a boy, right on up through. I've been doing tours for 30-odd years. And certainly I've seen icebergs. I know how quick and dangerous they can be. But for someone to intentionally go and decide to camp out on an iceberg, well, I mean, I don't think it was very well thought through, But I know from experience that when these situations occur, if they go bad, go south, so to speak, then you also have to expose people that, have to respond to that. And I mean, that's pretty unfair. And that could be from local folks, on site, or it could be from professional responders, Everyone gets exposed for something like that. And really, there's no gain except just for press, probably,
Well, Captain Barry Rogers, I'm glad that you've had such a good season. I hope that other iceberg does swing down your way so you get a few more tours out of it this year. Thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Well, Carolyn, thanks for your interest. And it's been a very great year for us and for everybody, really, in Newfoundland and Labrador. So thanks for your interest.
You're walking through the halls of the Enterprise. You go into a room and it's sick bay, and all the screens are working, and all the lighting is built into the set.
Director Jordan Canning, she talks about her experience directing an episode of Star Trek. That's coming up. Well, the Star Trek franchise has been around since the 1960s and has pumped out generations of devoted and passionate fans. St. John's filmmaker Jordan Canning is one of them, and she recently directed an episode of the new Star Trek series, Strange New Worlds. She joins us now from Toronto. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Hello.
Hi. You know, full disclosure, I am also one of those longtime Star Trek fans. And when I saw your name come on screen at the beginning of that episode called Charades, I was just tickled pink because it was exciting to see a director from this province direct an episode in a Star Trek series. And I'm wondering, what was it like for you to land that gig and to work on that set?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a culmination of like a long childhood dream. I was a big Star Trek Next Generation fan when I was a kid. Me and my parents watched it pretty religiously every night. And I always sort of fantasized about being able to have my own holodeck or play on a holodeck. That's really what this job felt like. You know, it felt like actually getting to step onto the Enterprise. It felt like getting to play in space, and yeah, it was amazing. It was so much fun.
I can just imagine. I also grew up watching Star Trek The Next Generation with my parents, so I know what it was like. And did you geek out at all when you were there? Like when you were on the bridge or in the transporter room, were you going around like pressing buttons and looking at all of the gear?
The amazing thing about the set is it really does feel like it's all connected. You're walking through the halls of the Enterprise. You go into a room and it's sick bay, and all the screens are working, and all the lighting is built into the set. And in the transporter room, you can slide that little slider right up the machine, and you forget because it's so gigantic and everything feels so real that you're not actually on a spaceship. You're in Mississauga, but. Yeah, I geeked out for sure.
And I don't want to give away the whole plot of the episode that you directed, but it does center on the character of Spock, which is played by Ethan Peck, who is the grandson of the famous actor Gregory Peck. And Ethan Peck had to really kind of get outside of that Spock comfort zone in that performance. There was a huge comedic element to that script, and he really delivered on it. And I understand that he credits much of his performance to the guidance that you gave him. So can you tell me a bit about that? Like, what did you say to him?
That's very sweet. Ethan is an amazing actor, and he cares very deeply about Spock and really works so hard at that character to do it justice, you know? And this episode, I think going into it, we both understood, that we were sort of fulfilling multiple series long fantasy or, what if about Spock being human. We wanted to have other ways to not just sort of what's happening on the page and in the dialogue of really like telegraphing that something has obviously changed with Spock. And one of the things we worked out too was like the physicality of him, his body language, his posture. Spock, as we know, Spock is like a very erect posture. He's very buttoned up. He doesn't like give you a high five or tap you on the back or give you a hug. And so that was a really fun way that we worked out together of like, okay, so what if Spock like gives a kind of like friendly pat to someone on the back, or like, what is it like if he hugs Chapel? Like these will be things that will be so bizarre for Spock to be doing. So the characters, the rest of the crew reacting to that is so fun too, because they're like, wow, Spock has never touched me before. This is very strange.
It was a very entertaining episode and really one of those Star Trek tropes, like Data getting the emotion chip, those episodes that you just love to see those characters become the complete opposite of what they normally are.
Yeah.
And Jordan, I know that it's a strange time right now in your industry with all the actors and writers south of the border on strike. Just wondering, how has that affected you and your plans going forward?
Yeah, I mean it's upended everything. I mean there are still Canadian productions that are happening, which is great, obviously, but anything that's an American show shooting in Canada, like Star Trek, or Fraggle or anything with American writers, WGA writers, or SAG, is shut down. And so we're feeling it big time in Toronto and Vancouver. Like, we have a huge industry here, and a lot of it depends on American productions coming here, and the crews aren't working, actors aren't working. It has a huge domino effect on our industry just as much as it does down there. So it could be a long fall.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I look forward to seeing what you do next, and I really appreciate you telling us about your wonderful experience on Star Trek. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, the Canadian Junior National Ball Hockey Championships are happening here in St. John's. Coming up on Here and Now, I'm going to chat with some players, one of the coaches, and I'm going to get a lesson as well.
Well, Canada's best and brightest ball hockey players will be meeting in St. John's this week. The Canadian Junior National Ball Hockey Championships are set to begin in St. John's on Wednesday. A total of 38 teams from across the country, including 8 from this province, are scheduled to compete. The CBC's Martin Jones found out more.
The Nationals are probably going to be the largest Nationals that CBHA have ever hosted. So we're expecting 38 teams to start landing at our airports over the next day or two. And as well, 12 of those teams are going to be female and the rest are minor. And we're expecting probably the biggest fan base that we may have seen in Newfoundland and Labrador in quite a while as well.
Pretty busy now prepping for this. We've had doing up medical kits, emergency action plans, all that stuff. During the event, we're going to be busy. We're going to be at the rink almost all the time. We have lots of staff from the clinic who are going to be here as well and have the clinic available to basically anyone in the tournament who needs anything throughout the event.
People probably don't have a good sense in general about how much time and effort goes into hosting something of this magnitude. We have a very committed hosts committee and chairperson is Mr. Paul Barron, and they've been working at this for over a year now, off and on, and over the last number of months it's just been ramping up. And even from a player perspective, I don't know if the average viewer out there would understand how some of these athletes are traveling like 2 and 3 hours for a couple of sessions on a day and going back home, and then on weekends people from Central and Western and even Labrador. We have 15 athletes out of Labrador, and some of them flew in as early as a week ago or more, and they've been here practicing and training with these teams.
Our team, we've been preparing a lot. We've had lots of practices and we've gone over so many things, and we're really starting to gel as a team, so I think it's going to be great.
Yeah. Are you excited for Wednesday?
Oh, I'm super excited. It's going to be my first national, so I'm really pumped. We've been practicing super duper hard. Our team is built on trust, so we trust that everyone who's not in St. John's is practicing, and yeah, I'm super pumped.
How confident are you for this competition coming up?
We're feeling pretty confident, especially playing in the hometown. So it's we're pretty confident playing in front of all our fans and stuff.
Advice for maybe somebody who's never played the game before?
I mean, just try your hardest. I mean, it'll get easier as it goes. So,
I mean, it's not hard to learn, but like when you get into the game, it's totally different than anything. Like if you're just standing around, you're not gonna be able to do anything. You always have to have your feet running. Yeah. So if you don't have the stamina and stuff, it's a really hard sport to get used to.
All right, I have never played hockey before. I've never played ball hockey before. So you're going to teach me how to shoot. What do I need to know? Take it slow.
So to start, you're going to put your top hand here, your left.
Okay.
So place
like
it
that?
the other way, and then your right hand here, like on the shaft of the stick.
Yep.
So you're going to take your ball, pull back.
Yep.
And then you're just going to snap.
All right. Can I try it?
Yep, go ahead.
All right. So
bring it
back, bring it forward, bring it back, and then you do. All right, so you were going to teach me how to do some fast passes?
Yes.
All right, what exactly is a fast pass? Walk me through what this is.
All right, so when we do fast passes, this is something we like to do to warm up, because when you think of when you're in a game situation, the faster and the harder you pass the ball, the less likely the other team is going to intercept the ball.
Newfoundland and Labrador has a history of doing fairly well at these competitions. So fingers crossed, we're hoping for some good success, and hopefully on Friday, Saturday, we're into some very meaningful games. So fingers crossed on that one.
Going all the way, keeping the goal at home,
Yeah. I think we're going to do good. I have high hopes for our team, and we just got to go into it with what we've been practicing and not try to change anything or do anything we're not used to, and go into it hoping and playing as hard as we can.
Officials in Nova Scotia say they've found 2 of 4 people who went missing in the massive flooding over the weekend. The RCMP confirmed the body of a 52-year-old man has been recovered. Other remains were found in a different area, but police are not releasing any details about the identity of that person. The 4 missing people were in 2 separate vehicles that were swept away. They were described as a man and a youth in one vehicle and 2 children in the other. The CBC's Paul Palmeter has the latest.
Well, I can tell you it's been a very, very long day for searchers in this area. This is the third day now of searching for 4 people who went missing in this terrible flash flood that happened in this area on Friday night and into Saturday morning is when it really, really got bad here. And police actually did confirm today that their search has found 2 people. Now, they've had helicopters in the air here all day, yesterday as well. They've been searching by boat, kayaks, hovercraft. They've been using everything they have to try to find these 4 people. And today, in a late afternoon news conference, they confirmed that 2 people were found.
At approximately 9 a.m. this morning, the body of a 52-year-old Windsor man who had been reported missing was located by searchers in the primary search area. Then, at approximately 11:30 a.m. This morning, human remains were located by civilians in Kings County, Nova Scotia. At this time, we are working with the Nova Scotia Medical Examiner's Office in identifying the remains, and we are unable to provide further details at this time.
Heartbreaking day for our province. The 4 missing souls and their families have been on everyone's minds across the province, and it's difficult to comprehend the magnitude of the tragedy and the loss that we're feeling today. So my sincere condolences to the family. We can rebuild roads and bridges and buildings, but we can't bring people back. And the legacy for these floods will be incredibly tragic.
So 2 people remain missing, and the 2 that were found, of course, quite a distance away from each other. One was in the area where the search was happening here in Hants County. The second body where they found human remains was in Kings County, which, as the crow flies, is quite a distance away, or if you drove, it's quite a distance away, but as the water flows, it really isn't. And these are tidal rivers that they've been searching, and of course the tide coming in and out to the Bay of Fundy. Now, the search will continue for the rest of the night, and again tomorrow. There are still 2 people who are missing here, and the stories that we're hearing in this area, some amazing rescues. Let's start with that, including one person who was actually plucked from a tree by a helicopter over the weekend. Hard to believe that happened, but it did, and thank goodness, because that person is alive today to talk about it. And the damage to roads, saw all kinds of crews working on roads that washed out. Of course, there are so many bridges that were just crumpled, essentially, in some areas, including here in Hants County. But there's a lot of mess in this area for sure. Paul Palmeter, CBC News, near Windsor.
The federal government has unveiled a plan to ban some fossil fuel subsidies. This is in response to a promise G20 leaders made years ago to phase out those subsidies that are deemed inefficient. But as Kyle Bax reports, some environmentalists feel the government needs to go further.
After committing to cutting subsidies to the oil patch more than a decade ago, the federal government announcing how it wants to tackle those financial supports.
What we're eliminating are federal support that are directed at the oil and gas sector, and that gives the oil and gas sector an economic advantage over other sectors, in that case to produce oil, gas, or coal.
There won't be an instant change. Instead, Ottawa unveiling a proposed framework. It would apply to 129 tax and non-tax measures to see which supports for the oil patch will stay and which will go. No dollar figures were provided, so at this point it's difficult to gauge what impact it could have on the oil patch.
We need to make sure that if governments change, if priorities change, the policies stay essentially consistent, because companies are betting billions and billions of dollars on this over the next decades to allow them to reduce their greenhouse gas intensity, and they need to have enough clarity to reduce the risk of that.
The federal government is clear it intends to keep providing funding to the industry toward reducing emissions, including the construction of carbon capture and storage projects. That alone could mean tens of billions of dollars of support over the next few decades. Environmental groups are pleased this long-awaited policy is finally here, but they wish it went further, since the federal government intends to keep providing subsidies to the oil patch for many years to come. Kyle Bax, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, it was certainly a big box office opening weekend for the brand new live-action Barbie movie, and that got us thinking. There's a Barbie for just about everything. There's a Dr. Barbie, a news anchor Barbie, but what about a Newfoundland and Labrador Barbie? What would she be like? The CBC's Amy Fian hit the streets to hear some ideas.
So if there was a Newfoundland Barbie Newfie edition, what do you think she'd look like? What accessories would she come with?
Amazing. Oh my God. I would love to see rubber boots, you know, little salt cap or something.
Yeah,
with like a coat or something.
Depends where she's from,
Yeah.
I guess. Is she a townie or is she from the Bay?
She would look like Irma Gerd, the drag queen, obviously. Yes. And so there would be like booger accessories,
Purple wig.
Purple wig, green clothes.
Yeah.
And really big heels.
Little pride flag.
Well, I think she'd dress in layers. That's good. Yeah, always cold. So, a pair of tights and or maybe some jeans, a t-shirt, sweatshirt, and then a rain jacket. Yeah.
And what about Ken? What do you think Ken would be sporting?
Well, I think Ken would have a beard.
Yep.
He'd dress in layers too. He'd be a tall brunette guy with, again, a pretty thick beard.
He'd be wearing a sort of mermaidish outfit with some sequins for on her pantsuits and little mermaid emblems all over her blouse.
Some good ideas there. I like the one about dressing in layers. I think that was spot on.
Absolutely. Such creative answers. Yeah. Can't wait to see that movie.
Yeah, me too. Definitely not dressing in layers these days because it's so hot, but some folks might need an umbrella.
Yeah, you might need well, I don't even know about an umbrella if it's pretty windy. I want to tell you about a storm that meteorologists are tracking right now, and there is a severe thunderstorm warning out for Bonavista North, and you can see it here on your screen. It's moving from Deadman's Bay around New West Valley. You can see here by Greens Pond, and it could produce nickel-sized hail, rain up to 25 millimeters per hour at that rate. So really heavy rain in a quick period of time, and it could cause flash flooding, of course, and this watch and warning is gonna last till this evening sometimes. And Environment Canada says if you hear the thunder roar, go indoors because this could be dangerous. So a little bit of breaking weather news for you there. Looking ahead to Tuesday evening and into Wednesday now, it looks like it's going to be a really nice day for the island. Let's take a look at those temperatures. Everything really in the 20s for the eastern half of the island, as warm as 28 in Gander with some sun and cloud for the island, as cool as 19 on the southwest coast, getting back up into the mid-20s into Corner Brook. Picking up a few showers in 19 as we head into the Straits and into St. Anthony area, and some showers for much of Labrador on Wednesday. 12 in Nain, 17 in Cartwright. Cooler there on the coast. 24 in Happy Valley Goose Bay. And 20 in Labrador City Wabush area. Wednesday is looking similar, perhaps a degree cooler as we head into Thursday with showers for Labrador still. 14 in Lab City, cool as 10 in Nain. Just a touch under 20 for southern Labrador here. And above 20 really for much of the island, 25 in St. John's and 28 into Gander and Grand Falls, Windsor. So another pretty nice summer day, just picking up a little bit more cloud along the south coast with some possible showers there. Now, as we get into our 5-day forecast for the East Coast, looking great until we hit the weekend when we're going to see a pattern change in the weather, and similar there for central and western. And as we head on into Labrador, it looks like we'll have some more precipitation throughout the week. And here is our weather photo talking about icebergs.
Yeah, what a great shot.
That's from Valerie Burton.
Rattling Brook, okay. So, great shot. Thank you so much for that. And that's it for us on this Monday evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope to see you again tomorrow.